We're now joined by Clare Woodcraft of the Emirates Foundation. Thank you very much for giving us a short interview. My first question would be, how do you actually see the clash of generations in the United Arab Emirates, and what would you name the three most important points that you would change if you could?
I think young people in the 21st century are facing a very complex world that is quite different from that of their predecessors. And I think this is really our role at Emirates Foundation, is to help young people navigate those complexities. And I think there are some structural trends that are distinct from what has happened also in previous centuries. And I think when it comes to the intergenerational conversation, young people need to be holding baby boomers to account. I think that there is something to say for the fact that young people were in a sense lied to. And there's a lot of content around this in the blogosphere from young people saying that we grew up in an era where we were told to chase our dreams, follow our passion, follow our aspirations, when actually the reality is that life is more difficult, more challenging now than for our predecessors, and that we should have been more focused on looking at employment opportunities, getting the right skill set. Now, I'm an eternal optimist, so I don't think this is bad news for young people, but I think young people do need to hold older generations to account and take much more ownership of their personal and professional development in the future than perhaps in the past, where in my generation and those earlier, we might have been more reliant on the state system, the educational system, to do that for us.
Concerning these points, what is the concrete mission of the Emirates Foundation, the specific mission?
So our mission is to inspire, guide and empower young people. So really what we're trying to do is help young people navigate these 21st century complexities. And we're not an education provider, we leave that to the state. We are not a training institution. We are there to really help young people understand and really be able to cope with some of the difficulties of their time. For example, we have volunteering programs. Volunteering is a great way of building young people's confidence outside of the formal workplace, building their networks, helping them become team leaders, helping them take responsibility, and then ultimately go on to get jobs. We have a program around financial literacy. We still believe that financial literacy is something that young people don't have enough of, that people still leave university not understanding basics around, accounting, around assets versus liabilities, which in the 21st century seems rather strange, particularly following a global recession, that young people are not equipped to understand what is an essential part of our society, how finance works. So those are the kinds of areas that we're looking at. We have programs around job readiness, work readiness, making sure that young people have the right career counselling, mentoring, internships, really trying to help young people be fully equipped to both flourish and thrive from a personal and professional perspective.
So what do you think are the key difficulties that the youth in the Arab Emirates has to face, and how do they differ from difficulties that the youth in Europe or the Western countries have to face?
Well, I'm increasingly surprised at how similar youth issues are. So if I look at the issues facing young people in the UAE, it's quite difficult to define unique ones that are only prevalent in that country. So for example, we have issues around unemployment. We have issues around, is the education system providing the right set of skills for future employment? We see a lot of industrial growth in the UAE, and yet we see a decline in young people studying science and technology. But I see that elsewhere across the globe. And I think young people are also facing a much wider and complex range of choices than historically. You live in the digital age. So whereas in the past you might have been influenced by your peers at school or your neighbors, these days you are being influenced by a whole galaxy of content and information. And so we have programs like mentorship where we're really trying to help young people and make sure they have the support to be able to make those choices effectively.
So just one more question on your personality. How do you actually discover life as a woman in the United Arab Emirates?
That's a question that I get asked all the time, and I think sometimes people don't believe me when I say that there is very little difference between my experiences in the Middle East and what I think I might have had elsewhere. I think if you are a woman anywhere in the world, there can be challenges around breaking through to more senior roles. But I think that there was nothing specific about my time in the Middle East that made me feel more aware of my gender than had I worked elsewhere. And I think if as a woman you are committed and dedicated and you're able to deliver, that you can flourish. I mean, I'm not saying that a lot more progress doesn't need to be done. Clearly it does. But I see that if you look at, European economies or across the world, the numbers of women in senior roles is still way too low, both at government levels and in the private sector. That's something that needs to change everywhere and not just in the Middle East.
Thank you for that short interview.
Thank you.